We are a faith-based social justice forum where individuals give their perspectives on various topics. It's an opportunity to express their viewpoint, their stance, and their angle on justice issues affecting the community and globally. Each episode features guests presenting their perspective on things like climate change, the church, urban farming, and food insecurity, all through a unique faith lens. Come check us out. Give us your perspective. Welcome to Perspectives On, in the Perspectives On's Women's Laboratory, where we're giving the world a voice. I am Lairalaine White, your host, and tonight we are being joined by the Reverend Dr. Miriam Burnett, who is the founder of the organization Resource and Promotion of Health Alliance, and also serves as senior pastor of Jones Tabernacle AME Church. Also joining us is Reverend Roland, associate minister of Big Bethel AME Church in Atlanta, Georgia, and Emancipation AME Church, I hope I'm getting that right, in Washington, D.C. Welcome to the show, ladies, and thank you for your presence. The aftermath of the election season is proving to be even more eventful than the election season itself. Not since the War of 1812 have we seen what media and politics is calling an attack on the United States Capitol. Many of our United States congresspersons are naming the President of the United States as the ringleader. In the words of the Republican Congresswoman Liz Cheney, the President of the United States summoned this mob, assembled the mob, and lit the flame of this attack. There's never been a greater betrayal of a President of the United States of his office and his oath to the Constitution. All of this is going on while the American health landscape is still fully engulfed, fully involved in a pandemic, where the CDC predicts that more than 90,000 Americans could die from COVID-19 in the next 3 weeks. And as vaccine rollouts across the country are lower than planned. Today, the state of New York added 13,000 more positive COVID-19 cases to its tally on Thursday, just today, with the statewide positivity rate slightly down from the day prior at 6.42, according to the governor's office. While right here in Georgia, in the state of Georgia, the positivity rate was reported just this morning to be at over 10%, and Grady Memorial Hospital reporting that they are at full capacity in its ICU. What will this division of one of America's political parties have on American culture in the future? If the Republican Party is divided over this, how will that impact American politics? How will impeachment proceedings at the beginning of a new presidential administration impact the effectiveness of the first 100 days of this year? We see that democracy in the midst of chaos, in the midst of the chaos of the last week's events, will change the way we engage in democracy. How would that happen? I would already see that we see the evidence of this change in the way we inaugurate our president and the level of security. ABC News reports that there are more U.S. troops stationed at the White House and the U.S. Capitol than all of Afghanistan and the Middle East put together. Suddenly, you find that there are a number of U.S. congresspersons who are afraid for their life, and those who are in the Senate are having a tendency to vote in accordance to their emotion, and some of them are afraid to vote against the current administration. So we have all of these things going on, and in the midst of this, I really want to glean some perspective from our guests tonight on just, what do we think about, this is the second time that this president is being impeached. How will this affect American culture in the long run? Either one of you anybody is willing, is welcome to give their perspective on it. I think I've said enough.
Just to make sure, your question is, where will this take us in the long run?
Yes. We're impeaching a president for the second time, and the impeachable offenses are phenomenal in and of itself, unique. Not since the War of 1812 have we had an attack on the U.S. Capitol. What is your perspective?
I mean, I guess since I'm already off mute, I'll go ahead and jump in. But from the millennial perspective, I think that it's honestly unbelievable. I think it's believable because we're seeing it happen, but it's unbelievable because as an adult that works with young people, we're dealing with things that I think our young people don't even do. And our young people, as they are now, understand authority, and they understand things like abuse of power and abusing power. And so I think that it's major for my generation in particular, who understands, who acknowledges, who talks about, to witness this reality in what is now becoming our history. I think it's really a travesty. I think it's sad. And I really don't know how we can really expect less, how we can expect more from regular citizens. Just recently, we heard about how a couple of Democratic Congress members caught COVID after they were stuck in the house with other Congress members who did not want to wear masks. And so I think when you are living in a reality like that, these are the professionals. These are the people that we vote into office. These are the people that we hold to a higher standard, because that's a part of the oath that they took. And so for this to be the reality on the ground, I think, like I said, it's just a real tragedy. It's unbelievable almost.
I think I'm a lot older than Reverend Hollis Roland. I was born in 1960, so I remember the uprisings. I remember the killings. I lived through them. I remember going south to family and being told you can't go here and you can't go there. Um, it, this is, for me, is a revisit to those days. Um, and the major difference is, and I said this last week, folk are uncovered, they're uncloaked. Um, I've had many experiences in my college days where I saw um, folks hooded and was victimized by that. But folks are unhooded now; they're uncovered, and so. And I say this to my congregation, and I say this to everybody I see who wants to talk about elections. Elections is one thing, but then you have to hold people's feet to the fire. You can go in office, but then what next? How am I going to hold you to the standard as Reverend Holness Roland just said? Do we have a standard? And then once we have the standard, how do we hold your feet to that fire?
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't necessarily just go for it does not just apply to our elected officials. It applies to each and every one of us.
Right.
We gave up a standard some time ago. We also, when we became neophytes, it's a word I just created. When we became the people that were so concerned about me, mine, I, we lost. Now, again, this is the old person's perspective. We lost the ability to say community. And when we lost community, when we lost knowing who our neighbor was, when we lost being able to walk across the street and say, I'm going to borrow a cup of sugar because so and so, and the little kids would be able to go across the street and go pick it up. My mama needs. We lost everything.
We did. We did. Well, I was born 7 years after you, And of course, one of the things that we talked about in my doctoral program was the fact that when we have movements like the civil rights movement, once the leader of those movements go away, whether it be by death, whether they quit, assassination, what have you, the momentum of those movements, they almost cease or they almost come to a complete stop, or they slow down significantly. And so, as a product of that generation that you come from, Dr. Burnett, and even some of those that preceded your generation, we did not, and I've said this before on previous shows, we did not, in my generation, do what we were supposed to do to re-emphasize community. So we stopped saying community, you're right. But that doesn't mean that we didn't know to say community. We knew to say community, we just didn't do it. And so I think what we're seeing is the byproduct of, in part, of what my generation did not do. And so I am hopeful, though, because one of the things that I recognize as part of what happened last week is that democracy held, because even though they had the insurrection, that's what they're calling it, they still proceeded. They came back later and they certified the votes, and so we're moving on. But the level of caution that we're moving on with it concerns me, because I wonder what the impact will be. And one of the things that really moved me, and I'm going to share this with everybody. One of the things that really moved me was a video that came out when during one of the riots, somebody was able to take a video of someone actually praying during that time. And this was Congresswoman, and I'll have her name in a second, but I just wanted to share that with everybody. So it was a video that surfaced in the aftermath of the what they call the insurrection, of this congresswoman who was taking time out to pray during what she thought or what she felt, and a lot of people felt at that moment, was mass chaos. In fact, it was Congresswoman Lisa Blunt of Rochester. And so I thought that, in the midst of all of that, the Bible says, if my people will humble themselves and pray. And I just want to, in my faith, I'm thinking that, when you pray, change does happen. And those people were afraid for their lives at that moment. And she took the time out to pray. And thanks be unto God, she was able to come out of that safely. And so I'm hopeful. I'm saying all that to say that I'm hopeful that everything that happened last week at the Capitol, as well as what's going on even today, just as today with the vote for impeachment, that this government that sits on the shoulders of the one that we all worship and give praise to, that this government will hold, and that they will be protected. Joe Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, as they move forward. But also, in the midst of all of this, we're in the middle of a pandemic, and we've got some frightening statistics that are coming out from some of the leaders of this on the medical landscape about this vaccine and the spread of COVID-19. We were all hopeful for a vaccine, and we were all looking for a vaccine to come out. And now that the vaccine is here, it just seems as though this disease has picked up the pace. And so I just wonder how, in the long run, what effect this will have on African American culture, not just African American culture, but all the cultures that were disproportionately affected. And I'll be interested in getting some perspective on that. We've been talking about this all summer, but now it just seems like it's a different spin on what's going on, because of we've got the vaccine, and now we see that the spread of the disease is picking up its pace. So how will this affect where we're going as a generation, as a culture, as a country, in terms of how are we dealing with this overall?
Excuse me, Reverend Burnett, were you going to say something?
I was going to say that one of the things that's important to note is that this is not a quick fix. People are expecting that the vaccine is going to fix this today. What we're seeing is a result of what folk did Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's.
Yep.
If there were, Atlanta is being victimized by folk deciding that they were going to leave their cities and come to Atlanta because it was open and everything else was closed. Well, where do Black folks live?
Right.
In Atlanta.
Yeah.
So it's a perspective of what are the social determinants of health? What makes us sicker? And why, when the rest of the world gets a cold, we get pneumonia?
Yeah.
Right? That's one perspective. The next perspective that has to be dealt with is this is not a quick fix. Third, we have multiple reasons, good reasons, to not trust the system. But then when you have folk like me and others who are the scientists looking at these things and saying, well, come on, or here are the pros, the cons, the risks, the benefits, you make your own decision, but still listening to the rhetoric and the myths, that doesn't make any sense. Then add back in access. And that's, for me, where my platform is right now. I'm dealing with the access.
Now, it's interesting you should bring up access, because joining us tonight also is perspective on medical correspondent Mandana Mayani, who herself really is a licensed physician, but is studying for her master's in public health. And she had a very interesting perspective on that access piece, for the access piece, especially in this country, and from what she has seen. Mandana, did you want to share that, or did you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. My concern is that even though we say that people have this freedom to ask their providers their questions or share their ideas or make their decisions, still there are many people who don't have that much professional literacy, or they don't know about medical aspects of everything. Even I saw people who are educated, but for example, he's an engineer or he is in another field, but they don't know any difference between vaccines or shots or influenza, or they don't realize what is going on, but still they are dying from the disease. My point is that isn't it better that somebody or some organizations take the responsibility and have people to get the vaccines, or I don't want to say force them, but at least educate them that it is better for you. Because for me, it's a controversy. Because, for example, I had the experience that the specialist gave two chemo options to the patient and choose between them. How we expect that a layperson in the street knows between two kind of chemotherapies or two kinds of vaccines or the side effects when somebody doesn't have the knowledge? Definitely she or he doesn't have any question. How they can come up with the questions to find the answer?
And I guess the same will hold true with the differences in the two vaccines that's available, Pfizer versus
Yeah,
Moderna.
or the side effects or the um, indications or contraindications. How they have to have this knowledge to ask these kind of questions.
They get the knowledge when they tune in to shows like this. They tune in to, I have done somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 webinars since last March.
Yeah.
It's probably more than that. I lost count somewhere along the way. And they've been as short as 30 minutes and as long as 3.5 hours with detailed information. We have literature out there that gives this information, but unless you access it, you won't know the answers. Now,
well, the amazing thing, not to cut you off, Dr. Burnett, but the amazing thing about what you're saying is that the information is out there. Yes, you definitely have, and I applaud you for what you're doing in African Methodism. But I wonder, you put the information out there, you've done more than 30. I wonder if the greater population of African Methodism has really been tuning in.
the answer to that is it's not just African Methodism. The videos, the webinars have been accessed by all kinds of folks of all race, creeds, and colors.
Okay.
We've used the African Methodism platform to put the information out there, but it has been accessed by many, many people.
Okay.
But not when you think of 300 million people in the United States and the percentage of Black and brown, which is a term I don't necessarily like. We've done a drop in the bucket because the masses are not accessing. When you look at, I've done these same kinds of webinars for FEMA. They are better attended by folk who don't look like me than anyone else. So the health literacy problem is one that is compounded by access. Now, yes, we have a digital divide, and we have some folk who have no idea how to get on Facebook, but it's on YouTube. Got a YouTube channel. You stream this to YouTube. There are other means of getting that information, but it's not being accessed. So I have a problem with health literacy and access. If you don't access it, you don't become more literate.
That's correct. And that adds some substance to what you're saying, Mandana, about being educated. How do you know what questions to ask? Well, I say, in our culture, that people don't access the information that's provided for them. And when you say, and Doc, when you say it's on YouTube, it's on Facebook, it's on all of these different channels that even in the communities where you have the disproportionate those populations that are affected disproportionately, they still have other means about getting access. I mean, they go to the clubs, they go into the grocery store still, they still going to the shopping malls. So there's still an opportunity, and for whatever reason, even if they are accessing it, there's still that lack of trust, and we see the evidence of that because some people are like, oh, I'm not going to take that vaccine. I'm not going to, I don't want to take it. I don't trust it. and they're going by information that was put out about the Tuskegee experiments, that happened more than 50 years ago. That was 50 years ago. You see? Go ahead, Reverend.
I hear that it was 50 years ago, but I mean, I think we don't give enough credence to the reality that systemic oppression is real. These things are by design. This is not just by happenstance. COVID happened last year. Black Lives Matter, happened last year. For an entire year, we saw week after week, video after video. This is all post-traumatic stress that we're seeing. So when you talk about a stressful year, I mean, last year was a lot. We had a lot of information to learn. You have some Black people that didn't even know that Black Lives Mattered. So, I mean, I think that all of those things coupled together, it's a lot. And then we also had election year. That clearly took precedent over most things. If you look on my shirt, it says, I matter, you matter, we matter. Black voters matter. And then the back of it says, it's about us. So if I really look at this year and in terms of education, sure, absolutely, COVID-19 mattered, but at the same time, there was a very big push in favor of the election and educational process geared towards that. So from my perspective, I just saw a lot of resources going towards that. And so now that we have gotten past that, voting still matters. Our voice still matters. That's why I thought it was important for me to wear this shirt this evening, even after the January 5th election here in Atlanta. But at the same time, we have to re-engage, I believe, and we have to focus and redirect how it is that we really want to serve our community truly, because we're really just at varying degrees, as Dr. Burnett said. Some people do have access, some people don't. When we think about, and then just looking at our community as a whole, I had to write notes. And so when you think about like COVID happening this year, and something that came up for me while you all were talking was about how we all saw it happen this year. COVID-19 was an issue. And then when they said, it's disproportionately impacting Black folks, they said, okay, well, all the essential workers need to be at work. Well, who were the Black people? They were essential workers.
Right.
And so I think that it wasn't, we have just been placed at the bottom of the totem pole in every genre, and it's very unfortunate. And so I'm really concerned about the people at Adams Inspirational AME Church in Fort Washington, Maryland, because many of them are from that generation, like you, Dr. Burnett. I've seen KKK rallies. I've seen trucks come into my mother's churchyard, and I'm a millennial. So these are other people that have also grown up in this era, and they're very concerned. They're worried. They remember lynchings. So I'm so concerned about COVID-19. I'm concerned about the post-traumatic stress that they're experiencing. I mean, and as Dr. Burnett said, she has been very progressive in terms of making sure that the AME Church has had a policy very early on. When people were talking about a lack of PPE, she was already talking about us getting out of our churches, making sure we do deep cleanings before we come back in, and making sure we're following protocol. And so I think folks are really going through, though. COVID matters, absolutely. But so do just, COVID matters, but then there's the reality of just walking while you're Black, or going to the gas station while you're Black, or sending your child out of your home just because they're Black, and someone misperceiving the look that they provide. And so I think some of those things have just taken somewhat of I don't want to say a precedent, but, there are things that some of us can do to prevent COVID, but there's nothing you can do to prevent being Black. And so I think that for a lot of folks, that has just, unfortunately, in terms of the educational cycle, it just seems like there's been a like an unspoken, so to speak, priority list. And it looks like these things are being hit in that order. So I'm hopeful that we can address it. Absolutely. But I think that there are a lot of other things on our plates, and folks are really juggling, and folks are really stressed and getting stretched out very thin. So I think those are just some things we need to consider in terms of our community and how they're absorbing the information. We're on information overload. When y'all sit for an hour, you're like, okay, enough. I'm an adult learner, and when I'm sit for an hour, I'm like, okay, after that hour, enough. So we're piling stuff on their plates. It's just a lot. And so I think we also have to think about that in terms of how we're disseminating the information.
In addition to that, and I agree with everything you said, in addition to that, we still are victimized by all of the things that made us vulnerable for COVID to begin with.
Yes.
Absolutely. Living quarters, from a social and physical environment standpoint, the stress that we see every day makes us at risk because stress decreases your immune response. We tend to live in close quarters. We tend to have all of the things that make us more immune sensitive, the diabetes, the hypertensions, the heart disease, the kidney disease. When you start looking at how COVID affects the body and the different organs, we're more likely to walk in the door with that problem anyway. So you just can't deal with COVID. You got to deal with what made us vulnerable to begin with.
Agreed.
Yeah, yeah. So my concern with all of that is we've got a new administration coming in.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as that oath of office is taken, as soon as he takes that oath of office, he's got to deal with all of the things that, all of the wrongs that need to be corrected. Okay. And then he's got this Congress, this entire branch of our government that rather than be on that same page or that same momentum, they've got to still talk about or deal with impeachment and beefing up security. And they've got to deal with, as human beings, they've got to deal with their own anxieties about serving in the United States Congress or United States Senate, and with presumably with their lives, at risk. And so my concern is with all of that, with all of that going on, how will that affect American politics or all of these issues that we're bringing up tonight? When will we get a chance to address those issues? Bring those issues that you talked about, Reverend Holiness Roland, to the forefront. When would there be an opportunity for us to do that if we still got to worry about, impeaching the president or, people, idiots rushing the Capitol? That's the thing that really concerns me. And when will we?
It's not just the U.S. Capitol in D.C. It's all the rest of them around the country. It's our churches. And so one of the things I did today was I put out a statement that said reevaluating and assessing church and church leaders' readiness and preparedness for active shooter, intruder in the building, vandalism, lockdown, and shelter in place. We have to revisit those things. And we've got to revisit those now. But one of the things we have to do is divide and conquer. We've got, you just named what, 10, 12 things on the plate? Well, we need 10, 12 leaders.
Yeah.
Everybody take one and get your team together. And we come out with leaders. What we did in the 50s and the 60s is there wasn't one person in charge of everything. And this thing about, well, I've got to shine. No, you don't shine when we're all failing. So we've got to play it all together. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I think it's that part for me. We don't really have, I don't think it's a choice. I don't think we have a choice it's a luxury to be able to wait for someone else to do what you need to be done. I think that is a luxury. And I think, unfortunately, at this juncture, that is a luxury that we don't have because we have already been miseducated. We have already been overlooked. We have already been bamboozled. All those words, fill in the blank. I mean, all of those things have already happened to us, generally speaking. So I don't think we can wait until anyone takes office because for those of us that believe in God, we are not concerned about who is in office anyway, because we believe that God has the ultimate say so. So nothing can happen but for God. If we really believe that, then I think that can't matter to us. Who's in the White House can't matter. I mean, maybe as a person, sure, as an individual, but as a collective unit, we have to still continue to forward, I believe, and continue to push and mobilize our issues because look at how this election was carried by us. By people of color, by Black women. You know, these are all of the things that we heard across the CNNs, the MSNBCs, and other news publications. And so when we hear that, there's obviously value in our voice. They hear it, but they're overlooking us. And so I think that we cannot continue to wait for someone else to do for us what we can do for ourselves. We have medical doctors, we have attorneys, we have people who are educated, people who are certified. We can do it for ourselves. And so I think we just really have to mobilize and really get together. And yes, Dr. Burnett is absolutely correct. It's not about the individuals. And I think so many movements have died because they were about individuals. People were following an individual, and when the individual was no longer there, oh my gosh, woe is me. Nothing can continue on. What? All of us are still here. Our issues are still the same. Our issues are still, some issues that my mother has dealt with, and Dr. Burnett has dealt with, and you, Dr. White, have dealt with, are things that I'm still dealing with right now, and things that I'm concerned that my children may have to deal with. So for me, it's I can't wait for them to make up their minds. I have to make sure that I am, a part of. And so the way that I do that, for those that are wondering, I mean, I try to instill hope in our young people and remind them and redirect, because maybe maybe the folks older than me, maybe it's over. Maybe y'all don't, and maybe me and others don't want to learn anymore. I'm a lifelong learner, but I'm just saying. But I believe that our younger generation, they really do have next. So in my personal opinion, it's about making sure they understand what our issues are, making sure they know that education is important, that there's more to them than what's in between their legs. And I think that is so important when we talk about carrying on. We're not going to be here forever. I think someone has already said that's why movements die with people dying. We talk about all these great leaders that die in office. And yes, what they've done is wonderful. But what about extending your hand back and uptraining someone so that there is nothing that is missed, so that there is no confusion, so that there is, a nice transfer of leadership versus you dying and us trying to fill a seat. And so I think that is very important in terms of what we do as far as regenerating our community, because no one is going to do it for us. So I think that, that's off the table. We're going to have to do it ourselves.
I think one of the things that keeps happening right here, right now, is an example of what we were talking about, community. Reverend Holness, Aunt Roland, and I are not blood family, right? But her mother and I go back to when we were teenagers. That's how long we've known each other. So when she calls me auntie, that's what the Black community used to do.
Completely normal.
Family. And that's hard to break. I mean, you saw what happened when we came home before we went live. She came on the screen. I didn't know she was coming, and I was like, "Hey, baby." We have to go back to those days. It's a perfect example of what we need to reclaim. So that's okay, Reverend Holness.
We absolutely do to reclaim that. We absolutely do. And it was my hope, at the beginning of this pandemic, there was a powerful message that came out. And I have to think of it, but it talked about the especially in the wake of a shutting down, about the healing of a land. And when everything had to shut down, we were forced to look inward. We were forced to come together as a community. Families were forced to reevaluate and take a second look at what does it mean to be a family? What does it mean to be self-sufficient? Now people are growing their own food. They're being more proactive about their health, hopefully. And so I think it's that America is probably going through a serious learning curve or relearning curve as a result of what's going on. And you said something very powerful earlier, Reverend Holness Roland, about I'm sorry, Dr. Burnett. You said something very very powerful earlier about people coming back to community, or we need to do it on our own. We don't have to shine. We don't have to look to shine. Okay, we already know what needs to be done. So you get your team together, right? And you go ahead and you do your part. And that's what grassrooting is all about. And just a little bit at a time, we'll get there. We'll get there. We're in this thing together, and we will get there. And so, and we can do it ourselves, as you say, Reverend Holiness Roland. We can do it. And we just have to redirect and look at this and take this as a time of healing. Yes, Madonna, did you want to say something?
I think, like you and Dr. Burnett said, being as a community, it is easier for us because it is in our nature. We are social, social human beings, and it is how we live. And individually living is, I think, more difficult for us as being as a social life. And I think it's our nature, and we have to live in a community to be more relaxed and less stressful.
Mm-hmm. And that is the impetus for this show, for the Women's Laboratory, is for us to recognize who we are as a community, and take some time to also address these issues from a woman's perspective, and just take a look at what's going on. And just like in a laboratory, you go into a laboratory, you're examining an issue, you're examining problems, and you're talking it through. And what are the solutions? I think tonight, in closing, we have discovered that a very important solution to this problem is that we have to find our way back to community. We have to be able, and we can just start by saying the word community, that we're going to come together, not Republican, not Democrat, not politician, not Jew nor Greek, as the Bible says. We're going to come together as a people and heal. Let's work on both sides of the aisle, and let's be in community with one another. And on that note, we're going to close out. And I just, for final words, just want to get your perspective on. I think we've already. I think you guys have already answered my closing question. But what is the hope that you have that we'll see an end to what we're going through right now? Just in a statement or two. I'll start out while you ladies are thinking. I'll start out by saying that my hope is built on nothing less. Okay, I don't want to necessarily always quote the Bible. I'm probably one of those who call a Bible thumper, but I would say that I'm really not. But some people would say I'm a Bible thumper. But my hope is built on nothing less than that what's going on now, that there is a higher power at work, and that we allow ourselves to be caught up in all of the rhetoric that's going on, and I call it rhetoric, all of the happenings and all of the energy that's coming as a result of, for example, what happened at the state capitol, at the U.S. Capitol last week. If we get ourselves too caught up in that, then we take away from the essence of the higher power. The higher power is the one that holds dominion over all of it. And we've seen it, and history has shown us that this higher power is at work. And this higher power, it can be touched by the feeling of our infirmities. This higher power is not just sitting by and watching us make fools of ourselves and try to destroy democracy, but it's actually at work. And so my hope is that people will begin to see that. That's my hope. Anybody else?
This is such a tough one, but I guess sticking with your theme, my hope would be that we can overcome this as we have overcome everything else from the time we were taken off the shores of Africa to the time we got here, to the time we were dropped off in Jamaica, some of us, and other islands, and to where we are right now. You know, I think that Michelle Alexander and Brian Stevenson stated so well. We've come from slavery to integration, segregation, integration, and mass incarceration. So I think just continuing to forward our people is my hope, that one day we really will be equal and that we will be seen as human beings and treated with the dignity, honor, and respect that we are deserving of, regardless of gender. So that's my hope.
Okay. All right.
My hope is that we all take our piece of the pie.
My.
Take our piece of the pie and
Yeah.
work it. Make sure that what we do with excellence. And if the only people we are impacting are the 5 people around us, those 5 people impact the next 5, and then becomes an exponential increase on resolution to where we find ourselves right now.
All right. Sounds good. Sounds good. Mandana, what's your hope?
My hope is to be able to do the thing that Dr. Burnett said. I can do my part to help others and take an action in my community to help people.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, we're going to close out tonight, and I just thank everyone for viewing and listening to us and joining into the Women's Laboratory. On next week, we will be talking about the climate crisis. Will be the emphasis. It will be the emphasis on for next week's show. We will have 2 activists on who will talk a little bit about some of the good things that are coming with the next administration with regard to the plan for this, the absence of net carbon and this clean economy, clean air economy that President-elect Joe Biden is pledging to be a part of American. The American environmental justice movement. And so we'll be talking a little bit about that. And until then, I leave you with those famous words by the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, that whatever affects one directly affects us all indirectly. Good night, everyone, and continue to think some good thoughts, even in the midst of this pandemic.
Welcome to Perspectives On, where we're giving the world a voice. We are a faith-based social justice forum where individuals give their perspectives on various topics. It's an opportunity to express their viewpoint, their stance, and their angle on justice issues affecting the community and globally. Each episode features guests presenting their perspective on things like climate change, the church, urban farming, and food insecurity, all through a unique faith lens. Come check us out